Do you want to run a TLR7 on your Glock 48? Keep watching. So here are the newest Glocks. This is the 43X MOS and the 48 MOS. They're identical to the 43X and the 48 that we had before, except for slide cuts for optics and this proprietary rail for adding a light. The proprietary rail kind of bugs me, but not a whole lot, because all the other Micro 9s have proprietary rails like the P365 and the P365 XL and the Springfield Hellcat. They all have something that is different from standard pick rail. So the fact that Glock did something different than standard pick rail is kind of to be expected at this point. But adding a rail to this gun makes a lot of sense. Glock small guns have undergone a considerable change over the last few years. The first thing we had was the Glock 42, which was super tiny, and it fired a super tiny bullet, and it carried a super tiny amount of super tiny bullets. The Glock 43 was a little bit better, and then the Glock 43X gave us increased magazine capacity, and they launched it at exactly the same time as the Glock 48, which gave you a longer barrel length. And in fact, the dimensions are basically identical to the Glock 19 until you look at them this way. The width of this slide on a regular Glock 19 is 1 inch, and the grip on a Glock 48 is 0.85 inches, which, if I do the math, is 85% of the Glock 19. So we've got our 1 inch slide on the Glock 19, and we've got a rail width of 0.83. And then we've got our slide width of 0.85 here. So there was room to put a full-sized rail on the Glock 48, but it would have resulted in a much thicker light going on there. I would have been fine with that because it would have given us a lot more options. If you want a super tiny light on a super tiny gun, oh, that's right. So if you want a super tiny light on a super tiny gun, you can go with the Streamlight TLR6. The only problem with it is it looks like a toy, it feels like a toy. The switches come from toys. It runs on watch batteries. It's not waterproof, but it is the width of the slide. Now, once you graduate to a Glock 48 though, this is a much more capable gun, especially if you upgrade to the Shield Arms 15 round magazine and put a red dot on it. You kind of want more light than the TLR6. Now, Surefire has something that is coming out called the XSC. It has a rechargeable battery, and it's going to be really slim. Not sure how slim it will be quite yet, but I'm eager to test it out. Until then though, I wanted to take my favorite small light, which is the TLR7, and put it on this rail. So the TLR7 is 1 inch thick right here, which matches the Glock 19 slide, and then it comes out to 1.1 inches for the clamp and the switches so they can fit nicely around the trigger guard. Now the CR123 battery, which the light is built around, has a diameter of 0.65 inches, so technically possible to make a thinner light, but I can see why Surefire went with something proprietary for their slim lights. So the way that the TLR7 grabs onto different guns is you have these replaceable keys that fit into the light rail and put it wherever it is on the gun that it needs to go based on the size of the trigger guard. So all that we really need to do is get a key in here that's going to catch the notch where it needs to. So the switches line up with the trigger guard, and we fill that 1/10 of an inch of gap. Easy, which is why it only took me 4 tries to get it right. I 3D printed my own key that snaps. All right. Tighten it in with a right here. You can see how it's off center. It's off center on here, but It is very, very handy light stuff going on. The higher buttons would actually be better for this because it sits low and forward, but you get the right idea. There's some wobble here. That's almost entirely inside of the frame. We actually have the ability to run this light on this new gun pretty well. Certainly enough to practice and experiment with this. Ideally, we would center this thing, but it would be difficult to 3D print a key that takes up the space on both sides. All it needs now is some testing. So I'm not using the shield mag because this is a very new gun and I haven't had a chance to get the magazine release for the Shield 15s. You're supposed to actually run a metal mag release with the metal magazine. So not there yet, but still working on reloads from the pocket, and it's all right. So I will say that the 15% slide width reduction not only feels good inside of a holster, it also feels good inside of the hand. So the question is, if this is actually a superior platform, is there any reason to carry the full-size gun anymore? And, well, I'm kind of gonna wait and see how these things hold up. If you actually can attach a bunch of extra stuff to this thinner frame and carry it for years at a time, that will be super cool. But for now, I'm probably gonna stick with this and experiment with this. In the high-speed footage, you can see how much flex is on that little tiny rail. It's probably fine in the short term, but I don't know how long it can hold up to a heavier light. Still tight, still works. No cracking of that PLA print. So this works pretty well. In fact, it even works inside of the Glock 19 holster for the TLR7. Feels awfully good, especially considering how much room is on the outside of the slide there. 0.15 inches, I'd guess. You don't actually get a slimmer holster experience, but it totally works for practicing and experimenting, which at this point is all that we're doing. With these 3D printed parts, I don't completely trust them. This is PLA, which is brittle, but because of how it's being clamped in place, there's not actually any strain on it. It's just kind of a compressive force, and it actually holds up surprisingly well. I'm pretty confident that this is gonna hold, but I cannot guarantee anything. Not all 3D printers are made the same, not all filaments are made the same, but the 3D file for this is going to be in the description below. You can download it, you can print it, you can play with it, you can experiment with it. And if you have a holster for the Glock 19 TLR7, you can even carry it if you want to. Now, we should probably wait and see what the Surefire light is like. I have pretty high hopes for it, pretty high expectations for it, but it's gonna be priced at $330, and the TLR7A is $130. So I actually think there's probably a market for Surefire to take this key that I have designed and injection mold it with the same plastics of their regular keys and potentially push that as an option for folks that have the Glock 48 MOS and want to run it as a 15% slimmer duty gun with optics, 15 round shield arms mags, and a proper duty light. So if you have a Glock 19 a TLR7, a Glock 19 TLR7 holster, and a Glock 48 MOS, and a 3D printer, and enough filament to print this file. Well, at this point, I'm probably only talking to like 3 people, but yeah, go download the file, print it out, play with it. All 3 of you. And Streamlight, if you make an injection molded version of this key, I will make holsters for this combination. They'll be exactly like this one, but 15% thinner right here. Think about it. And if you like the idea of running a TLR7 on a Glock 48, you'll love the idea of running a TLR9 on a Glock 43. Yes.